I have a structured settlement and I need cash now. Hello everyone, my name's Stonsey Boy and welcome back to Reading with Stonsey. Today we are reading pages 177 to 192, or 175 to 192, my mistake. Don't know why it says 77, but whatever. Today we're also starting on part 3 and only reading one chapter. It's also the first episode where we don't have our two characters, Citra and Rowan, together like we normally do, which is kind of sad actually. I like it when they're together and they just kissed. Like, come on. But yeah, without further ado, because today should be a shorter episode, let's begin. Part 3: The Old Guard and the New Order. I've never taken an apprenticeship. I simply never felt compelled to subject another human the way of life. I often wonder why it motivates other Scythes to do so. For some it is form of warranty. Learn from me and odd because I am so wise. For others perhaps it's compensation for not being allowed to have children. Be my son or my daughter or a year, and I'll give you power over life and death. Yet for others I imagine you prepare the self-gleaning. I be the new me, so that the old me can leave this world satisfied. I suspect, however, if I can ever take on an apprentice, it will be for a different reason entirely. From the Gleaning Journal of H.S. Curie. Chapter 18: Falling Water. As far as the eastern edge of mid-America, near the East America border, was a home with a river running beneath it, spilling from its foundations into a waterfall. It's designed by a very well-known Mortal-Age architect, Scythe Curie told Citra, as she led his way across the footbridge in the front door. His place had fallen into disrepair, as you can imagine. A home such as this couldn't survive without constant attention. It was an horrible state, and no one cared enough to preserve it. Only in the presence of the Scythe would bring forth the kind of donations required to save it. Now it's been returned to its former glory. A Scythe opened the door, and let Citra step in first. Welcome to Falling Water, Scythe Curie said. The main floor is a huge open room with polished stone floor, wooden furniture, a large fireplace and windows. Lots and lots of windows. The waterfall is right beneath the expensive terrace. The sound of the river running beneath the home and over the falls is a constant but calming white noise. I've never been in a house with a name, Citra said, as looked around, doing her best to be unimpressed. But it was a bit much, wasn't it? Especially for a Scythe. Aren't you all supposed to live simple lives? Citra knew the comment would have brought forth the Scythe's temper, but she didn't care. Her presence here meant that Scythe Faraday had died for nothing. A beautiful home with no consolation. Scythe Curie did not respond in anger, just said, I live here not because it's extravagance, because its presence here is only the way to preserve it. The decor seemed to be frozen in the 20th century when the place was built. Only hints of modernization were a few simple computer interfaces and unobtrusive corners. Even the kitchen was a throwback to an earlier time. Come, I'll show you to your room. They climbed the staircase that was lined to the left by layered sheets of granite and echoed through the right of the rows and rows of shelved books. The second floor was a Scythe's bedroom suite. The third floor was a smaller bedroom and a study. The bedroom was simply furnished, and like the rest of the home, had huge windows framed with polished cedar. Wrapping around two entire walls, the view of the forest made Citra feel like she were perched in the treehouse. She liked it, and she hated it for what she did. You know what I don't want to be here? You know that I don't want to be here, Citra said. And at last, some honesty from you, Scythe Curie said with the slightest of grins. And, added Citra, I know you don't like me, so why'd you take me on? The Scythe looked at her with those cold, inscrutable gray eyes. Whether or not I like you is irrelevant, she said. I have my reasons. Then she left Citra alone in a room without so much as a goodbye. Citra never didn't remember falling asleep. She hadn't even considered how exhausted she was. She recalled lying down on the comforter, looking out on the trees, listening to a river roaring endlessly below, wondering if the noise would eventually go from smoothing to unbearable. And then she opened her eyes to stark incandescence, squinting at Scythe Curie, who was standing in the doorway by the light switch. It was dark outside now. Not just dark, but lightless, like space. She could still hear the river, but it couldn't see it in the hint of the trees. Could you forget about dinner? Scythe Curie asked. Rachel rose, ignoring the sudden vertigo when she stood. You could have woken me. Scythe Curie smirked. I thought I just did. Citra made her way down toward the kitchen, but the Scythe let her go first. And she didn't remember this way. The house was a maze. She took a few wrong turns. Scythe Curie didn't correct her. She just waited for Citra to find her way. What? Citra wondered. Would this woman want to eat? Would she silently accept anything Citra prepared, as Scythe Faraday had? The thought of a man would have brought a wave of sorrow chased by anger. She didn't know who exactly to be angry at, so it festered. Citra arrived at the main floor, ready to access the contents of the pantry and refrigerator, but to her surprise, she found dinner table set for two, steaming plates of food already there. I had a hankering for Heffenpfeffer, the Scythe said. I think you'll like it. I don't even know what Heffenpfeffer is. Best if you don't. Scythe sat down and bade Citra to do the same. But Citra wasn't quite ready, still wondering if it might be a trick. Scythe dug a spoon into the rich stew, but passed when she saw Citra still standing. Are you waiting for a formal invitation? She asked. Citra couldn't tell if she was irritated or amused. I'm an apprentice. Why would you cook for me? I didn't. I cooked for me. Your grumbling stomach just happened to be in the vicinity. Finally, Citra sat and tasted the stew. Flavorful. A little gamey, but not bad. The sweetness of the honey-glazed carrots cut the gaminess. The life of a Scythe should be dreadful if we didn't allow ourselves the guilty pleasure of a hobby. Mine is cookie. This is good, Citra admitted, and then added, thank you. They ate mostly in silence. Citra felt odd not being service of the table. She got up to refill the Scythe's glass of water. Scythe did not have many hobbies, or at least none that she shared with Citra and Rowan. The thought of Rowan made her hand tremble as she poured and splashed some water on the table. I'm sorry, Scythe curious. She grabbed her own napkin and blotted the spill before it could spread. You will need to steady your hand if you're going to be a Scythe again. Citra couldn't tell if she was being serious or sardonic. This woman became from harder for Citra to read than Faraday, and reading people was not her forte by any means. Of course, she was never realized that until she spent time with Rowan, who was in her own unobtrusive way was a master of the observation. Citra had reminded herself that she had other skills: speed, decisiveness of action, coordination. Those things she would come to play if she was going to. She couldn't finish the thought. She wouldn't allow herself the territory that she thought led to was still too terrible to consider. In the morning, Scythe made blueberry pancakes, and then they went out gleaning. While Scythe Faraday always reviewed his notes and chosen subject in public transportation, Scythe had an old-school sports car that required substantial skill to drive, especially for a winding mountain road. This Porsche was a gift from the antique car dealer, Scythe explained to her. He wanted immunity, Citra asked, assuming the man's motive. On the contrary, I just gleaned his father, so he already had immunity. Wait, said Citra, you gleaned his father and he gave you a car? Yes. So he hated his father? No, he loved his father very much. Am I missing something? The road ahead of them straightened out. Scythe shifted gears, and they accelerated. He appreciated the solace I afforded him in the aftermath of the gleaning, she told Citra. True solace will be worth its weight in gold. Still, Citra didn't quite understand and wouldn't until much later that evening. They went to town was 100 miles away from arriving at the lunchtime. Some Scythe prefer big cities. I prefer smaller towns, Scythe said. Towns that perhaps haven't been gleaning in over a year. Who are we gleaning? Citra asked and looked at the parking place. One of the liabilities of taking a car was off-grid. You'll find out when the time is to know. They parked on the main street when walked. Now strolled down the street, which was busy and not bustling. Scythe leisurely pace made Citra uncomfortable. She wasn't sure why, when it occurred to her that she went gleaning with Scythe whose focus was always in the destination. That destination wasn't a place, but a person. The subject, the soul to be gleaned, as awful as it was somehow made Citra feel more secure. For Scythe there was always a tangible end to the endeavor, but nothing about Scythe manner suggested premeditation at all, and there was a reason for that. Be a student of observation, Curie told Citra. If you want a student of observation, you should have chosen Rowan. Scythe ignored that. Look at people's faces and their eyes, the way they move. What am I looking for? A sense that they were here too long, a sense that they're ready to conclude, whether they know it or not. I thought we weren't allowed to discriminate by age. It's not about age. It's about stagnation. Some people grow stagnant before they turn their first corner. For others, it could take hundreds of years. Citra looked at the people moving around them, all trying to avoid eye contact and get away from the Scythe and their apprentice as quickly as possible, all while trying not to be obvious about it. A couple stepping out of a cafe, a businessman on his phone, and a woman beginning to cross the street against the light, then coming back, perhaps fearing the jaywalking would get her gleaned. You don't see anything in anyone, Citra said, irritating on both the task and her inability to rise to it. A group of people came out of the office building, perhaps the tallest one in the town, about 10 stories. Scythe zeroed in on one man. Her eyes looked almost predatory as she and Citra began to follow him at a distance. Do you see how he holds his shoulders, as if there was an invisible weight upon them? No. Do you see how he walks, a little less intently than those around him? No. Do you notice how scuffed his shoes are, as if he doesn't care anymore? Maybe he's just having a bad day, suggested Citra. Yes, maybe, admitted Scythe, but I choose to believe otherwise. They closed in on the man, who seemed aware that he was being stalked. All that remains is to see his eyes, the Scythe said. To be sure. Scythe touched him on the shoulder. He turned, his eyes met, but only for the slightest moment. Then he suddenly gasped. because Scythe Curie's blade had already been thrust up beneath the rib cage into his heart. So quick that was Scythe Curie that Citra never saw her do it. She never even saw the scythe pull out a blade. The scythe offered no response to the man's awful surprise. She said nothing to him at all. She just withdrew the blade, and the man fell. He was dead before he hit the pavement. Around them, people gasped and hurried away. Not too far away, they wouldn't watch the aftermath. Death was unfamiliar to most of them. This needed to exist in its own bubble, as long as they would stay beyond the outer edge, peering in. The scythe whopped her blade in a modest cloth, and the same pale lavender as a robe, and then Citra lost control. "You gave him no warning," he blurted. "How could you do that? You don't even know him. You didn't even let him prepare." The cloud of rage that billowed forth from Scythe Curie was so powerful, it was the most visible thing, and Citra knew she had made a terrible mistake. "On the ground!" yelled the scythe, which in volume it echoed back and forth between the brick buildings and the street. Citra immediately got to her knees. "Face the pavement, now!" Citra complied, fear overmaking her fury. She splayed herself, prostrate on the ground, and her right cheek pressed against the pavement, which was searingly hot from the midday sun. Her view was now a dead man, just a foot away, whose eyes were empty and yet staring into Citra's at the same time. How could a dead eye still stare? "You dare presume to tell me how I accomplished my task?" It would be the world that froze around them. "You will apologize for your insolence and be disciplined." "I'm sorry, Scythe Curie." And the mention of Scythe Curie's name, a murmur erupted around the bystander. It was legendary everywhere. "Convince me." "I'm sorry, truly sorry, Scythe Curie," Citra said louder, screaming into the face of the dead man. "I'll never disrespect you again. Get up." The scythe was no longer raging in earth-shattering wrath. Citra rose, fierce at the weakness of her own legs, which shook beneath her, the incontinence of her eyes, which spewed tears as she wished to evaporate before Scythe Curie or any of the bystanders could see. The world-renowned Grand Dame of Death turned to stride away, and Citra followed her wake, humbled, hobbled, wishing that she would make Scythe's blade and stab it into the woman's back. Then a furious had left herself for wishing such a thing. Then she got into a car and pulled away from the curb. Only then, when they were a block away, did Scythe speak to Citra. "Now then, it will be your task to identify the man, find his immediate family, and invite them to the falling water so that I may grant them immunity." She spoke without the slightest hint of fury the mere moments ago. What? It was the scene of the street had never happened. Citra was caught off completely off guard, a bit dizzy, as if all the air sucked into the car. "I have 48 hours to grant them immunity. I'd like them to gather at my home this evening. But back there, when you had me on the ground, yes? And you were so angry." Scythe Curie sighed. "There's an image to uphold, dear," she said. "You defied me in public, so I had no choice but to publicly put you in your place. In the future, you need to hold your opinion until we're alone." "So you're not angry?" The scythe considered her question. "I'm annoyed," she said. "But then, I would have warned you of what I was about to do." Your response was justified, and so was the consequence I levied. And by the end of the emotional roller coaster, Citra had to admit that the scythe was right. There was a certain amount of decoratorium required of apprentice. Other scythe might have needed a punishment far worse. They circled back, and Scythe Curie let Citra off on the side street, just a block from where the gleaning had occurred. She would have an hour to find the family and extend them the invitation. "And if he lives alone, both our jobs will be easy today," the scythe said. Citra wondered about the gleaning could possibly be easy. The man's name was Barton Breen. He had turned the corner many times. He had fathered more than 20 children over the years, some of whom were now over a century old themselves. His current household consisted of his most recent wife and his 3 youngest children. These were ones who would receive immunity from the gleaning for 1 year. "What did they don't come?" Citra asked Scythe Curie on the way home. "They always come," Citra told her. And she was right. They arrived a little after 8 in the evening, somber and shell-shocked. Scythe Curie had them kneel right before the door and kiss the ring, granted them immunity. Then she and Citra served them dinner, which the scythe had prepared: comfort food, pot roast, green beans, and garlic mashed potatoes. Clearly the family had no appetite, but they ate out of obligation. "Tell me about your husband," Scythe Curie asked, a voice gentle and sincere. The woman was reluctant to say as much at first, but as soon as she couldn't stop telling the hell of her husband's life, soon the kids joined in the memories. The man was quickly went from anonymous subject on the subject to the individual whose life even Citra now missed, although he had never known him. And Scythe Curie listened, truly listened, as if they were more intent on memorizing everything they said. More than once her eyes moistened, reflecting the tears of the family. Then the scythe did the oddest thing. She produced from her robe the blade that had taken the man's life, set it down on the table. "You may take my life if you like," she told the woman. The woman just stared at her, not understanding. "It's only fair," the scythe said. "I've taken away your husband, robbed your children of their father. You must despise me for it." The woman looked at Citra, as if it might know what to do, but Citra only shrugged, equally surprised at the offer. But attacking the scythe was punishable by gleaning, not if you have the scythe's permission. Besides, you've already received your immunity. I promise that there will be no retribution." The life lay on the table between them, and Citra suddenly felt like the pedestrians of gleaning frozen just now on the other side of the unthinkable event horizon. Scythe Curie smiled at the woman with genuine warmth. "It's all right if you strike me down. My apprentice will simply bring me to the nearest revival center. In a day or two, I'll be as good as new. The woman contemplating the blade, the children contemplated their mother. Finally, the woman said, no, that won't be necessary. Scythe removed the blade from Scythe. Well, in that case, on to dessert. And the family devoured the chocolate cake with passion and didn't show the rest of the meal, as a great pole had been lifted. After they were gone, Scythe helped Citra with the dishes. When you're a Scythe, he told Citra, I'm sure you won't do things my way. You won't do things the way Scythe Faraday did either. You find your own path. It may not bring you redemption, might not bring you peace, but it will keep you from despising yourself. When Citra asked the question she had asked before, but this time she expected might get an answer. Why did you take me in, Your Honor? The Scythe washed the dish, Citra tried it, and finally the Scythe created the oddest thing. Have you ever heard of a sport called cockfighting? Citra shook her head. Back in the mortal age, unsavories would take 2 roasters, put them in a small arena, and watch them battle to the death, wagering on the outcome. Was that legal? No. But people did it anyway. Life before the Thunderhead was a blend of bizarre atrocities. You weren't told of this, but Scythe Goddard had offered to take both you and Rowan on. He offered to take both of us? Yes, and I knew it would only be to pit the 2 of you against each other day after day for his own amusement, like a cockfight. So I intervened and offered to take you, in order to spare you both Scythe Goddard's bloody arena. Citra nodded in understanding. She chose not to point out that they had been spared of the arena at all. They were still facing a mortal struggle. Nothing would change that. She tried to imagine what it would be like to have Scythe not step forward. The thought of not being separated from Rowan was tempered with the knowledge of those whose hand they'd be under. They didn't even want to imagine how she was faring with Goddard. As is, it was turning into an evening of answers. Citra dared to ask a question that had been so inappropriately on the street before the man's body was even gone cold. Why did you glean the man today without warning? Didn't he deserve at least a moment of understanding before your blade? This time, Scythe was not offended by the question. Every Scythe has his or her method. That happens to be mine. In the urge of mortality, death would not often come with no warning. It is a task to mimic what we've stolen from nature. And so that the face of death was chosen to reincarnate, my gleanings are always instantaneous and always public, lest people forget that what we do, and why must we do it. But what happened to the Scythe who gleaned the president? The hero who went after corporate corruption and not even a thunderhead could drought. I thought the Grand Dame of Death would always gleam with a greater purpose. A shadow seemed to pass over Scythe face, a ghost of some sorrow Citra wouldn't even guess at. You thought wrong. If you've ever studied Mortal Age cartoons, you'll remember this one. A coyote always plotting the demise of a smirking, long-necked bird. The coyote never succeeded. Instead, his plans always backfired. He would blow up and get shot or splat in a ridiculous height. And it was funny, because no matter how deadly his failure, he was always back in the next scene. There was a revival center, but just beyond the edge of the animation cell. It had seen human foils and the resulted in temporary remembering or momentary loss of life. People stumble into manholes or hit into falling objects, tripped into paths of speeding vehicles. And then it happens. People laugh because no matter how gruesome the event, that person, just a coyote, will be back in a day or two just as good as new, and no worse or wiser for wear. Immortality has turned us all into cartoons. From the Gleaning Journal of H.S. Curie. If only. Being in a world of cartoons sounds... Well, actually, it kind of sounds too easy, to be honest. Maybe not. Maybe I wouldn't like to be in a world of cartoons. But yeah, today we read pages 177 to 192. Next time we'll be reading pages 193 to 211. That is about... How many pages would that be? 14? No, hold on. Hold on. I'm good at this math stuff. So it'd be 8, which would then make it... What? Oh, 18 pages. I was like, wait, only 8 pages. What? That doesn't sound right. No, 18. Speaking of, today we also read chapters 18 to 18 and started on part 3. Next time we'll be reading chapters 19 to 20. So we'll probably be learning about Rowan's side of being taught by Goddard. And yeah. So, without further ado, it's time for... Reading Corner of the Day, doing it up Stonsey's way, Bop. Today we are learning about the Australian Terrier. It's Australian, so, I mean, that's cool. That's a cool fact about it, but I don't know anything else really about this breed, except that it looks silly and a bit stupid. But before I can make fun of it, or, make fun of its small little height, I should learn of its history. Not only does it make me look smarter and more kind or more smarter, incredible in front of my mother, my father, my sister, my brother, or the clouds that are dispersing as the thunderstorm has passed. But it makes me more intelligent. Not only does intelligence lie in knowing things, but it also lies in knowing things and teaching them to others. That's why some of the smartest people you ever meet are doctors or teachers. That's not going to be very long, as this dog doesn't have a lot of anything, really. So, the history of the Australian Terrier is that the National Terrier of Australia, this one of the smallest of working terriers, born in Tasmania and has various European breeds, it shares as much background with Silky Terrier in Tasmania, the rough-coated terrier's all-purpose companion, killing vermin and snakes, controlling livestock, and sounding the alarm at intruders. The cornucopia breeds it crosses the rootstock. Among the prosecutors, Skye, Dandy Dimont, Scotch, Yorkshire, Manchester Terriers. The result was a dog that was both useful and striking in appearance. The first of the breed was shown in late 1800s as a broken-coated terrier in a blackish-blue sheen. The name of the soon-to-be black and blue and tan, the toy, and the blue terrier. Then, in 1900, the rough-coated terrier, blue and tan, although mainly known for the blue and tan coloration, a head of sandy color was also found among the early representatives of the breed. Soon after the breed had made its way to British show rings and the homes, by the 1925 it had come to America. It received American Kennel Company recognition in 1960. So, what's the temperament? Is this dog good with kids? Because it really didn't talk much about kids and if they're good or good friends with them at all. Well, the temperament of the Australian Terrier is that one of the quieter terriers, the Aussie is nonetheless a plucky, tough character, ready to go after a rodent when a chance arises. It's fun-loving and adventurous. It needs daily exercise to keep it from becoming frustrated. It's clever and generally eager to please, making it one of the more obedient terriers. It gets along fairly well with other dogs, household pets, and is reserved with strangers, reflecting Earth dog heritage. It does like to dig. A diggy diggy dog. Love that for a dog. But what's the upkeep? How do I keep my diggy diggy dog up and running? Well, the upkeep of the Australian Terrier is that it's an active breed that needs a good outing every day. Either a moderate walk or a rollicking game, or an off-lead run of the safe area. It's created to withstand harsh Australian conditions. It's physically able to stay outdoors in temperate, warm climates. It's also a good house dog and needs to spend time with his family. Swire coat needs weekly combing, plus twice yearly stripping of dead hairs, regular plucking of dead hairs that will keep the coat optimal condition year round. Some trimming around the feet will add a tidy look. Now, for the health section, if you're a child, please cover your ears. If you're a teenager or an adult that wants to know the health of the Australian temperature terrier, or like what to look out for, that type of stuff, please listen in. Major concerns are nothing. Minor concerns are patellar luxation and diabetes. They're occasionally seen with leg perthus, seizures, cruciate ligament rupture. They're just tested for nothing, and lifespan is 12 to 14 years. Because everything is kind of, it can happen with a dog. My dog has seizures. Now, what's the form? What's the function? Imagine this dog is in front of you. It's definitely not slightly longer than it's tall. The Australian Terrier is small, sturdy, and medium boned. Its proper proportion and weight is working terrier that should exhibit a ground-covering gait in hard condition. Its weatherproof coat is made of a short, soft undercoat and a harsh, straight outer coat. It's about 2.5 inches long, shorter than tail on the tail and lower legs. It sports ruff around the neck and top knot, of longer hair adds a keen, intelligent expression. Now, for the final part of today's video is the tier list. 5 is the best, 4 is better, 3 is average, 2 is the worst, and 1 is the worst unless it comes to grooming. Energy level. Okay, God, this is a lot. Energy level, exercise requirements, playfulness, affection level, friendliness towards dogs and other pets, and grooming requirements are all at a 3. All fantastic except for the grooming. Is at a 3. That's awful. Friendliness towards strangers and ease of training are at a 2. So lower than average, but that's good for ease of training. Watchdog abilities out of 5, but protection abilities out of 1. Cold and heat tolerance are both out of 3, so average. The weight of the healthy Australian Terrier is 12 to 14 pounds, and the height is 10 to 11 inches, both male and female. And it's thank goodness it's not feet, or else we'd be living in a world of giants. What are you doing? Sorry, that's why I'm so confused. What are you doing? What are you trying to... And you're sitting on my book. Hi. What you doing? You're shaking? You okay? What's up? Oh, you're just dazed for a second. Oh, you're all good. You're all good. You're an old chihuahua. One day I'm going to have to make a video on chihuahua, and you're probably going to be dead. And I'm going to be sad. You know that? Oh, you're a good dog. You're a good dog. You want to go lay down somewhere else? He's been laying down with me since the last episode, so. Because we just got through a freak thunderstorm. Oh, nope, you can't. No, okay. All right, love you. Bye. Bye-bye. I don't like recording videos with a blanket on me, so I guess it kind of works out. What also works out is that next time we'll be reading about the one that you'll be learning about in the next episode. So, I hope you guys have a fantastic, wonderful day. Be polite, be efficient. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see you guys next time.